Tim, I am incredibly fascinated by your work, by your history, by your experience and your current ambitions. So let's set the stage hearing from you. Who are you and what mission is driving you at this season in your life?
Great. It was great to be on here with you, John, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. Yes, so I'm a filmmaker. I direct animated films. Prior to that, I was an animator, which is different from directing animated films. And a lot of people will sort of call anyone who works in animation an animator. But we have painters, we have colorists, we have designers, and we have animators. And so the animator is the professional who makes the character move. And so in a lot of ways, it's the closest thing animation has to an actor. We're responsible as animators for the performance. So that's what I did prior to directing it. I still love the act of animating, and and I miss it. As a director, I don't get to do it, but I get to work with the animators who do it. I directed an animated film for Sony Animation called The Star, which a lot of Catholic families know, and I'm very honored that they watch. Some families watch it every year at Christmas, and some families even watch it during the summertime because their kids are so obsessed with it. And for that, awesome. I apologize to the parents, but it is sort of it's a type of success, I guess, for that movie. Yeah, it's a wonderful movie about the nativity from the point of view of the animals. So the whole idea there is everyone's got a nativity set. The animals have always been there, but what were they thinking was going on when that was happening? And so the reason this was an attractive way to approach the nativity stories is that it allowed us to do something fresh and original that people hadn't seen before, with a nice comedy kind of flavor to it. Comedy, adventure, all these things that you want out of a mainstream animated film, but without touching the heart of the nativity story. Which, by the way, is act one of the story of Jesus. So it's not even a complete story on its own. And that's always the challenge facing, I think, nativity movies, is that if you make the ending of Jesus being born objectively great and wonderful, you're sort of missing the point of the humility of the thing. And so really, this is supposed to be the beginning of a story, not the climax of one. But if you find another character to anchor your story in, and for us, the main character was the donkey, you can sort of arrange that arc so that really is the completion of that character's story. So anyway, that's The Star. I'm also the second of 6 kids, and my filmmaking, my love for filmmaking began in the context of being in a big family. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, and as one of 6 kids, we would take, I would grab my mom's VHS camcorder, this sort of shoulder-mounted bazooka camera, and we'd go out into the desert with a bottle of ketchup and basically film ourselves killing each other. And sometimes,
like any boys do, yes.
Yeah, we did. And one I remember really well with my 2 brothers, we had a gang war movie we wanted to do where the gang members were killing each other on some mountaintop. Yep. And but we only had 2 actors because I was behind the camera, and so it was just my brothers. My brother would throw a bomb, cut to my other brother getting blown up, and then cut to him in a new outfit throwing something over the other side, and then the other brother in that. So just changing costumes to be multiple gang members all at one time. And this was before we had editing software too, so we used to have to okay, go. Do your shot, cut, run over to the other side of the mountain, get the other shot, and totally edit in camera. So it was kind of a funny way to make movies. There's not a kid in the world who makes movies that way today, I'm sure, because it's so easy to edit things. But it was, I found a real love for it. It was a great way that my brothers and I spent time together, and we're still very close and love each other very much. We used to fight relentlessly as kids, but we also used to make art together, and that was a wonderful childhood that we had. My brother, so I'm the oldest of the 3 brothers. The next brother down, brother number 2, is still in the film industry, and he is writing on a project that he and I are working on together. And we have another feature we have 2 feature films that he's writing that I'm sort of directing and shepherding. So, all of that stuff from our childhood, it really has proved meaningful to us as adults as well. So
I love hearing that. That is just such a beautiful bond that you have with your siblings. And I think that there's often this notion that family, or at least siblings, don't stay that tight or that close after leaving the home. And so it's refreshing to hear that you guys still have that friendship and that love for each other. Now, you are being Well, so I guess what I wanted to say was you're an Academy Award-winning nominated director, animator, writer, but you, working in the entertainment industry now, went to Harvard and got a degree in history and literature.
Right.
So was this idea of becoming an animator or becoming a screenwriter or any of those sort of things on your mind? Was that a desire of yours, or what did you think you were going to be going into when you went to
Yeah,
school?
like around high school age, I started to feel a conviction that I was pretty sure my vocation was to be a filmmaker, because I continued to love it. I started to take it more seriously, invested in better equipment and just like upping my skills. And I even asked my parents to send me to the New York Film Academy summer camp to see if could I do this for 6 weeks straight full time and still like it. And not only did I still like it, I liked it even more. So I thought, okay, these are all good signs that this is a real thing I want to give a real shot. And then it was time to apply to college. So I applied to, I applied to all the colleges I wanted to apply to, and I got into Harvard. And I thought, well, I have to go, obviously, because wow, I got into Harvard. That's great. But I didn't want to go to Harvard. I didn't want to go there and study film. And I don't want to say that and sort of dismiss the film department at Harvard, because Darren Aronofsky and Mira Nair, among other filmmakers, have come out of the Harvard film program there, but it was just frankly not the kinds of movies that I was interested in. I grew up loving Indiana Jones and Jurassic Park and Independence Day and Men in Black and all that kind of stuff. If it had Jeff Goldblum or Will Smith in it in the 90s, I was probably a huge fan of it.
Yeah, I watched them all as well.
Yes, so. And but I also had maybe a surprising amount of wisdom for the age that I was. I made a decision, or kind of had a discernment that I still look back and think that was a really good choice. What I thought to myself is, I'm going to let college be college. I want to study something academically fulfilling, because, I could go to film school and learn how to make a movie, but I don't know that I know what to make movies about. So let me study the world. And history and literature was a field that seemed, really what it was that I didn't want to get into the literature department, because I didn't want to get into literary theory, and I didn't want to do the history department because I didn't want to get into historiographical theory, and I just wanted to study the cool stuff and not get into theory, even though these days I love theory. But at the time, the idea was let me avoid the BS, the academic BS, and just if I split between hist and lit, then maybe I'm just playing with real material and not spinning my wheels philosophically. But so I did that. I love the history and literature department at Harvard. Turns out I had a ton of academic freedom, and I got to study. At the time, your whole junior year was a curriculum that you would plan yourself. So I studied circus freaks, literally 19th century circuses, turn of the century circuses. I studied the Wild West shows of that same period.
So good.
I got in a way, my focus at that time was I loved popular culture between the Civil War and the invention of movies, because between those two things there was a fair amount of economic prosperity, and people had free time and leisure time, but they couldn't spend it watching movies. So they did all sorts of other things. And one of the things they did, I remember reading, was that sort of rich people on a Sunday afternoon used to go to the insane asylum and watch crazy people be crazy for the afternoon.
Wow, I never knew
the
that.
Human Zoo. So it's unfortunately, well, I guess for better and for worse, but the entertainment landscape has really flattened as a result of the televisual medium, because now it's let's watch sports, let's watch a movie, let's watch TV. But at the time, there was all sorts of things that people would do for fun.
Creative energy
I found
there.
that period fascinating. But anyway, that's kind of neither here nor there, because what happened at Harvard is that I had said to myself, I'm going to put my film ambitions basically on ice and take a little detour to enrich myself intellectually and spend these years kind of finishing myself up as a student of the world, and then I'll get back into film at the end. But what ended up happening was that they had some animation electives, and I thought, well, all my friends are too busy with homework to act in a movie the way I used to do it. Hey guys, can you come out with me to the location for the weekend? No, I want to
get the ketchup bottle. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So animation at the time was attractive because, hey, I could make a few little films by myself if I do it this way. And what I discovered in that first class that I took was that I loved the process of stop motion animation, and everyone else in my class was totally miserable because they, I mean, it's not hard to imagine their point of view. In fact, if anything, we should be surprised that I liked it, because stop motion is it's painstaking. People say it must take patience. It does not take patience, actually, because it's very active. You're not waiting for anything, but you're just doing the same thing for hours upon hours upon hours. So to me, it's more like cross country or like running a marathon, where you're just like, can you just run for 2 hours? And can you just move a little puppet around for 2 hours for really like 8 hours? And so it takes more than patience, takes endurance. And I loved it. I found out I easily entered a state of flow, and the time just slipped by, and I sort of like entered the reality of the puppet. And anyway, so I got immersed in it. And the other thing was that the other students in the class were having like kind of middling, mediocre results, and I was quickly getting better and better and getting really good at this. So I kind of, there I was, a freshman at Harvard, thinking like, man, maybe this is where I should focus my filmmaking ambitions, because the impression I had was that filmmaking, the world of Hollywood, is like a cutthroat world of sharks, and it's going to be a very tough thing for me to do. But if I go into animation, well, I'll be a small fish no matter what, but maybe I'll be a small fish in a smaller body of water than a small fish in the giant ocean of Hollywood. So that was kind of the rationale. And there are a lot of things wrong with the rationale that I had at the time, which one of the main ones is that, if anything, animation is more collaborative than live action filmmaking. So getting into it so that I could make movies by myself has proven to be like totally the opposite of the actual experience. But it was a good move, because then by the end of Harvard, I had taken 4 animation classes and made 4 little animated films. And I was like, I'm into this. I'm taking this seriously. And I decided at that point, I'm going to study this like on purpose, for real, not just as an elective on the side. And so I went to graduate school in the UK for a master's degree in directing animation. And that's a 2-year program. It's the school, National Film and Television School of the UK, which is the school where Nick Park created Wallace and Gromit. And actually that was the first half of that movie was his student film. And then NFTS kicked him out and said, you got to finish this, but you've been here for like 6 years, get out of here. And then Aardman partnered to do all of the moon sequence on A Grand Day Out. So anyway, I love Wallace and Gromit. I've always loved it, even before I wanted to do animation. And so I thought, well, I'd love to go to that school. And at the end of those 2 years, I had a film. My graduation film was called Head Over Heels, which is a 10-minute film about marriage. The idea there is that it's a husband and wife, and the husband lives on the floor, the wife lives on the ceiling. They can't agree which way is up, and the question is, how are they going to put this marriage back together? And so it was a fun project. Spent 15 months making it with a solid sized crew for a student film, and I wish I could put a number on it, but number of people who walked through that door and back out was probably around 50. Most of them just student volunteers building little props and sets and things for the movie. And after 15 months, we had this movie that was very successful then as a short in the festival world. So it had its premiere at the Cannes Film Festival, which was great. So I got to go to Cannes. Although the interesting thing is the culture at the Cannes Film Festival is not, they don't love animation. So it's kind of like being the classic redheaded stepchild or whatever at Cannes. Yeah. That being said, it was still cool to be at Cannes, but I have to say the feeling's mutual, because most of the movies at Cannes are not my cup of tea either.
That's right. Yes.
So we were at Cannes. We went to the Hiroshima Festival. The film won an audience award in Brazil. So it was doing this wonderful thing. And the cool thing is the movie has no dialogue. So the movie was performing just as well in, outside of English speaking territories as in. So that was really cool. And then, so what happened was that we won 3 awards that were what are called Oscar qualifying. So certain festivals have been accredited by the Academy, such that if you win the grand prize of those festivals, you are now qualified to submit for consideration to the Oscars. So that was why the door was open to us submitting Head Over Heels for the Oscars. And again, just kind of like watched that as kind of probably about a 6-month process where like we were on the long list because we were qualified. Then, oh my gosh, we made it to the short list of 10. And then suddenly we were one of the 5 nominees. And so that was amazing and sort of surreal, and frankly, like didn't even sink in at the time. I remember when that announcement happened, I just leaned into my computer to make sure they had spelled my last name right. And then when I went to the Oscars with my then girlfriend, now wife, I'm in a tuxedo, she's in an evening gown. There was this voice in the back of my head saying, "Yeah, but you still don't have a job. Like, this is nice, but it's not real yet." And the film career really only got started when I finally moved to LA, where I still live today. And I got a job animating on a feature film, and that job lasted for a year, and I was paid to make movies, and that was an incredible experience because it was like, finally, this is actually my job. And that's when I felt like I've made it.
That's so great. So Tim, you have already had an experience. Real quick, did you get to travel to Brazil and to Hiroshima?
No,
I
think I've never been to Brazil. Those festivals did take me to various places. I did go to Hiroshima. I did go to something in Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires. Yep. Portugal, and a few other places, but I didn't actually go to the Brazilian festival.
Okay, wow. But I still think that is incredibly fascinating, especially at a young age, right? You get to experience it. I used to be a professional trumpet player that went to Yale, and so we have a competition there. And and I toured all over the world. Yeah, I played for the Beijing Olympics in 2008, and it was such a phenomenal experience for me to be able to see other cultures and to be able to digest that. Now, going back to your Head Over Heels, which I have watched and I have enjoyed, I was struck by the lack of vocal words, and it for me reminded me of Up, which was one of the first times that opening scene at Up that brought tears to my eyes. Like I started to cry. That you don't need to have that the words to actually enter into a dialogue and be transformed and moved emotionally by such an experience. So was that all part of the intent when you entered in? I also loved I'll put it in the show notes so everybody can watch it, but I really enjoyed the end where it's not quite fully resolved, right? Like there's still work to be done. Right. And I thought that your faith was obviously influencing you. So I guess I got two pathways here in dialoguing about that. Was it your intent to create something substantial that could move somebody to reflect on their own lives without force feeding them, exactly a scripted dialogue? And then two, was the intent to the second one just left me. I wanted to ask it as I was going down that road, but anyways, let's go.
You were talking about the fact that it's not fully resolved at the end, and
that's correct. It's not fully resolved, and your faith guiding you. Thank you. That's exactly right.
I got you, John. So I will say Pixar was at the top of their game when I was in college and in film school. So sort of let's say 2006 to 2012, that run of films included Up and Toy Story 3 and I'm sure some others that I could say, and the fact checkers would say that was not outside of that window. But anyway, sure. Pixar was making the greatest films, animated or not, of that time. And the inspiration for Head Over Heels, like kind of multiple places, but the inspiration for the goal of what do I want to do with this, actually, and a lot of people kind of make the connection to Up, and certainly I love Up, but it was actually the short film, I think, that was attached to the beginning of Up that mainly inspired me with Head Over Heels. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that was Partly Cloudy, which is their short about the cloud who's, all the clouds are making babies for the storks, and the storks.
Yes,
and this is the story about
I remember that
makes all the crappy babies, like the babies that are dangerous and violent.
Yes, I loved it. Yes.
And that movie, that little short, even more than Up and the opening of Up, which is beautiful and amazing, but that movie, Partly Cloudy, touched a nerve with me, and man, were tears brimming for me, because I think what I saw there was like, this is a movie. Why am I finding this so moving? And it connected to a lot of other moments in my life that I noticed, like, these are the moments that make me cry. They're not sad moments, but they're moments where I realize I have received love that I didn't deserve, or like someone went above and beyond to show love to me, and I'm like, but it's me. Don't give me this love. Why are you giving me this love? And it's like, relax. It's you're gonna get it even though you don't deserve it. So the way that stork shows love for the like the cloud who thinks like I'm totally unlovable because I make dangerous babies and no one, of course that stork abandoned me. It makes perfect sense. But why do I have to be me? And then not only is the stork coming back, but the stork puts on that football helmet and says, I'm ready. I'm ready for whatever you got. It is such a beautiful short film. And Head Over Heels was, in a lot of ways, what I was trying to do was give the audience a similar experience of like, what does it feel like to be loved when you feel unlovable, And so it's a movie about, this marriage that's where they've just drifted apart and it's impossible for them to come together because they literally experience gravity differently. But what it takes, and you see in the movie, and I won't spoil it, but you see it, just what it takes is effort. Like it doesn't come together by itself. Like it's a choice you have to make. And that was the thing in terms of like, what did I want to do with the movie and why was I making that movie then? Again, like a number of ways to talk about it, and they all kind of came together. But this was at a time when like there was a lot of debate about marriage in American politics, and I could see that people of faith kind of lacked a leg to stand on because our culture of marriage was in freaking shambles anyway, and there was rampant divorce, and just. I could see that like the American culture of marriage is very unhealthy. And so no matter which way this debate goes, like we have a ton of work to do on just like waking people up to the beauty of a commitment. And so reviewing the culture of movies and stories about romance that we like to tell, it's like 98% of them are about falling in love. And that is a wonderful, beautiful part of a romantic relationship, and that's why we like to make movies about it. But it's also the easiest part. Like we say, falling in love. You fall. Like it's like there's a gravitational pull to it. You don't have to try to fall in love. It happens to you. But then the iceberg below that tip of the iceberg is like everything else that happens after you fall in love. And I was experiencing that in real time with my girlfriend who would a couple years later be accompanying me to the Oscars. We met senior year at Harvard. And then we were long distance while I was in the UK. And a long distance relationship is not easy. It's like if you only get an hour every day, like something she said kind of sits with you for 23 hours. And you're like, what did she mean by that? Like, that was kind of rude. What the hell? Like, boy, she's a real, and then suddenly you're like kind of PO'd at your girlfriend. And it's like, so you sort of see, I was experiencing this like, we need to be close and united, but we are somehow experiencing rancor. And then that was also echoed in what was happening in American politics at the time, because this was 2011, which was the year that it was Obama versus Romney in the campaign. And it was kind of the first ugly election campaign that I remember. I mean, there's always a little bit of pot shots, but that one was really ugly. And of course it's gotten uglier since then, but so it's almost quaint to imagine that I was sort of scandalized by the way that campaign went. But I thought, man, the American left and the American right, like we're married to each other. Like we are one country. Like whether the right wins or the left wins, it's not really I win, you lose. It's like it's like we're a two-headed monster or Siamese twins. Like you don't get to just like genocide the other side. They're not your enemies. They're actually your brothers. And so, yes, you need to fight for what you believe in and fight for what's true. Absolutely. But there has to be a sort of a path to living together after the election. And I felt at the time, and I think history is kind of justified, we are not headed in a direction of compatibility.
I concur. Yes.
And now I don't want to give the impression, not that this is the subject of our conversation, that I'm like a squishy moderate. I do have beliefs that I believe very strongly in, but I guess the bottom line here is that like there had to be a way that two people who don't see eye to eye, who in fact can't agree which way is up, can still find a way to live together. And that was kind of where the film felt like very topical at the time for me. And of course, it's like, it's also about marriage, but it is also about, funny enough, American politics. And actually my wife and I, then girlfriend, are on different sides of the political spectrum too. So this was also a movie about her and me. And what happens, she's not Catholic actually. And so what happens if we turn 60 years old and we still don't agree on this stuff? Like, what would that look like? We would be like this couple. And And look, the bottom line for all of this is like what it's going to take is active effort. This is a plant that will die if it is not watered and maintained and taken care of. And that's kind of where the couple begins. They're at a place where their marriage is withered. And the task in front of them is can this be brought back to life? And so I thought we need to be putting messages out in the culture that remind people that love is not a feeling. It's an act of free will. It's a choice that you make, and it's a commitment that you either honor or you dishonor, if you abandon it. And it's totally up to you. Like,
right.
So.
Excellent. I actually hope our listeners will go check that out. I'll be sure to put that in the show section. So you have experienced a degree of fame at such a young age, right? You were still in school. This was your school project that you're finishing. And now I imagine, haven't lived the entertainment industry. I imagine there's little steps where you feel like you've made it. And so one, you were getting paid now. You alluded to that. Oh my goodness, I got paid. Where was the next step where you're like, this is it? I'm actually, was it the star? Was it that far, years down the road, or where were you in that journey before it kind of said, this is it?
I got that Oscar nomination, and I just, there's so much, if I talk about my path to where I am now, it's really a story of providence, because there is no, unlike more institutional jobs where you start at the bottom and you work your way up and there's a ladder and you get a promotion. There's no such thing in the film industry. It's very scattered. It's basically a gig economy. And so you kind of are building out your own career. And so, and that's why people say, well, it's who you know and it's luck. And that's very true. It is those things, but it's also providence. And the providential thing that I experienced right after my Oscar nomination was I returned to where I was living at the time, which was New York City, and thought, great, I'm an Oscar nominee, bring on the jobs. And there were no jobs. And that summer,
there were none.
I recapitulated my previous summer job, which was working as like a sort of jack of all trades at the New York Film Academy summer camp, which I had gone to as a high school student. Now I was like like I say, jack of all trades, is building out the schedule, occasionally teaching as a substitute teacher if there was a class where the teacher couldn't be available. And I remember, and someday I'll tell this story, and the kid who did it will be like, "Oh, that was me." But I remember that summer, a kid in the room that I was in snapped his fingers and was like, "Hey, IT guy, my thumb drive's not working." And I was like, "You little bastard!" And I was like, "I'm an Oscar nominee. I don't belong here." And so there was, but I guess this was wonderful because it was a real exercise in humility and you're an Oscar nominee, big effing deal. And I said, I joked to my family, guys, from now on, you're gonna have to call me Oscar nominee Tim Reckart. And they were like, "Oh,
you just have to get that recognition somewhere." Yes,
right. And they said, "How about we just call you Oscar loser Tim Reckart?" And it's that's what family's for, right? But I guess the point is, because of that, when I came to LA and I amazingly got this job, and again, the timing was providential because it was a movie called Anomalisa. It had been fully staffed all summer, but then no one will care about these details unless they care. But the new season of Robot Chicken kicked off. And so all the stop motion animators who were Robot Chicken alumni moved over to Robot Chicken. And suddenly in that moment, Anomalisa was like, crap, we need animators. Who's out there? And my entire reel was just clips from head over heels. I had nothing else on my reel. I had never been paid ever in my life to do it. I went in, I did an animation test, and they hired me because they needed animators. So, and that job lasted a year. And anyway, the point is, from my humbling summer as the IT guy at New York Film Academy, I could not have been happier about this job. So I had always wanted to direct eventually, but at the time I thought, well, this is great. I'm a professional film industry. I'm a film industry professional. Yeah. But also from the Oscar nomination, I got an agent and a manager who were kind of, mentioning my name around town to various executives like Tim Reckart, he's the new up and coming guy. He wants to direct, and what do you guys got? And I reviewed, I looked at things. I remember the first script that it got sent my way was Alvin and the Chipmunks 4. And I was like, oh, I said to my agent, I don't want to do Alvin and the Chipmunks 4. And he's like, Tim, you got to start somewhere. So what I learned there was what I figured out was, okay, what's the Alvin and the Chipmunks movie that I would want to direct? And I kind of developed this somewhat inspired by Stitch from Lilo and Stitch, like thinking about, okay, well, Alvin is the embodiment of mischief. So can I do a movie that's really mischievous? And I was remembering from when I was a kid, there was the original Lilo and Stitch campaign was like Stitch running through and like breaking Mrs. Potts and like sort of vandalizing all of the Disney movies. And it was really funny and different. And I thought, okay, what if you did something really different with Alvin? And I pitched, one of the things I came up with was like, what if Dave leaves Alvin, like Alvin has a nightmare or something, and Dave leaves Alvin and his brothers in a cardboard box by the side of the road and drives off, like that beat in Toy Story 2. And then we go to end credits, and we directed by Tim Reckart, and we do a fake out with the audience, and then Alvin wakes up from his nightmare or whatever. Like that was the kind of thing. And I was like, if this was the Alvin movie they made, I would love to direct this actually.
Yeah.
And I didn't book the gig, but it was a win-win, because what I realized is, and I, this is very applicable. I give this advice to filmmakers and artists all the time, and I wonder if this might be applicable to other professionals too. But what I realized is, like, I got to pitch the version of the movie that I would want to direct, win or lose, because if they want me to direct that version of the movie, great. They hired me to direct my version of the movie. If they don't want to make the movie, if they don't want to make my version of the movie, and they say, well, thanks for, then we'll have someone else do our version of the movie. That's great too, because I don't want to get hired to direct their version of the movie. Like that would be its own version of a nightmare. Getting, if I just told them what they wanted to hear, the worst thing that could happen to me is that they hire me and like, crap, well, now the next 3 years of my life are going to be me directing this version of the movie that I'm not interested in. So the lesson from Alvin was like, you just have to be candid and honest and tell the truth about what your artistic taste leads you to. And then you can't lose, because you'll only be directing movies that you want to direct. And the funny thing was that then applied on The Star, because The Star came around, and I, at the time, and maybe still, had no intention of doing anything faith-based. I really, like, especially at the time, things have changed a little bit in the last 5 years or so, but like at the time, faith-based meant bad unless it was The Passion of the Christ. Yeah. And so I just had no interest in doing it. I wanted to do, Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park movies, like the movies that I had loved. So just cool adventure movies, The Incredibles. And then The Star came around, a movie about Jesus, the Nativity. And it's like, yeah, I'm Catholic, but I didn't think this was what I wanted to do. And the truth is the concept that the studio had bought, I thought had a lot of problems. And so I went into that first meeting thinking that I was politely declining the job, because I kind of went in saying like, well, these are the problems I see, and I don't know that this is going to really resonate with the audience. And, I think, you could hit it this other way, and it would be much more elegant and subtle, and it wouldn't be so, blah, 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 blah. And I actually got a call back and was like, hey, we want you to interview with the head of the studio too. So then it was like, huh? Like, oh, and so again, so it was the same thing where like, I did not get booked to direct the version of that movie that I did not want to direct. I got hired. I got brought in because they liked what I said about it, even though what I said was critical. Wow, that was amazing. So like, and so it brought me in a context where it's like, Tim, we want your vision, and we want you to put your stamp on this and to make the version that you told us about in that meeting. And it was so interesting because I went into Hollywood thinking that my faith was going to be a liability, and it was going to just be dragging me, and I was going to have to like find out clever ways to hide it without dishonoring it or doing anything contrary to my morals, but like maybe not being loud about being Catholic. But here I was, my first directing movie that I got, not only because, but certainly because I was a faithful Christian, and they wanted someone who believed in the religion to direct this movie. So, and the funny thing is that has proven to be true over the course of the rest of my career. Like, I followed up after The Star. I sold a TV show to DreamWorks Animation. And I booked a directing job directing at Netflix, directing a really cool Paul McCartney musical with Paul McCartney involved, and he was writing songs, and he would text me every now and then. It was a really cool experience. But the TV show got shelved at DreamWorks, and then Netflix, they had executive changeover, new executives came in, and they canceled the Paul McCartney musical. So both of those things didn't actually end up happening. I thought this was like, okay, I did the faith-based thing. Now I'm going to do the mainstream thing. These things didn't actually work out. There I am without a job, actually feeling rather relieved because the job had gotten quite difficult towards the end. And And it was kind of fun for a while because I thought, well, I'll just interview for the next movie. And I did a few pitches, did not realize what's now very clear in retrospect, that the industry was about at that time entering a downturn where like there was not going to be any work. This was kind of mid to late 2022. And it was like, okay, well, we were kind of like running on the fat of our savings, but now we're getting a little close to the meat of our savings, and we need to start getting some work. So I prayed a novena for work to Saint Josemaria, who's the patron saint of everyday life and certainly of everyday work. He's the founder of Opus Dei, and Opus Dei is all about holiness and ordinary work. So I prayed a novena to him, and on like day 7 of the novena, I hadn't even finished, I got a message on LinkedIn from Hallow, the app, saying, hey, we kind of, and truth is, I don't even know how they found out about me. It was a cold email that said, like, do you ever work in live action? We're looking for directors to work with on some possible projects in the future. And this came out of the blue. I said, yes, I have done some live action. I had actually done a quick little commercial for the Archdiocese here in LA for the Capital campaign. So that was Providential because I had something I could show. What this ended up leading to, they were kind of hiding the ball because they didn't want to, get anyone too excited before making a commitment. But basically, they were looking for a director for their Super Bowl commercial, which was in 2023. And so I went on to direct that Super Bowl commercial with Mark Wahlberg and Jonathan Roumie in it, and that was an amazing experience. But again, it was like, look at this, like the two things that have actually gone out there and made a big splash, I got not in spite of my Catholic faith, but because of it. And so seeing that, man, it has been so, it's just given me a lot of clarity about what I'm doing here and why I'm here at all. Like, this has all been a gift from God. And I certainly had to do my part to like have, prepare myself, have the skills, have the ambition and the drive to like get these jobs done. But God couldn't have put a clearer signature on my career than to like, for the only things that I've done that have actually made it out into the world to be things that I got because I'm a Catholic. So it's a beautiful thing. It makes me feel like the servants who receive the talents from the master, and it's like, okay, you've been given these things. What are you going to do with them? And so I feel obligated and honored to be obligated to sort of like find ways to help people of goodwill, Catholics, Christians, whoever, people who might otherwise like not have an easy time making it into the industry. I try to go out of my way to mentor people like that and to help them find their way, because God's given me a lot of a position of influence and success, and I feel like there's a responsibility attached to that.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the entertainment industry. You mentioned over the last 5 years, there's been a big change, of course, because of COVID. Prior to that, though, we had the advent of on-demand streaming just constantly, right? You could do whatever you want. You could binge watch. You could, doom scrolling with social media, et cetera. And so I would love your thoughts, because the entertainment industry has changed. And as a father, which you are, you've had to go down this road of how to protect your children from a certain degree of ideological influence that's being intentionally shoved into cartoons and things for children. My family were huge fans of Bluey. We're big fans of, just animation in general. Well, with that said, it's a concern of mine constantly. So why don't you kind of shape the last decade of what you've noticed in the entertainment industry, because I think it's going to lead to a nice segue into, your mission currently.
Yeah. Well, if you just go back to like 2000 to 2010, Disney, Pixar, they were on a roll. They were making awesome movies. I love Wreck-It Ralph.
Yes.
Which is Disney, not Pixar. I love, that whole run, Toy Story 3 and everything. And these were just movies. It's not even that they were like, because let me just contrast this, and maybe I'll at the risk of offending people who worked on it. The Mario Brothers movie, perfectly safe. There's nothing objectionable to it. There's also nothing substantial to it, in my opinion. Like, that movie is pretty forgettable as soon as it's over. It's basically cotton candy. So there's no nutrition in it either. And so I'll contrast that with what Disney was doing at the time. It's not just that it was safe, but these were like good movies about, I think Wreck-It Ralph is a movie about vocation. and about not running away from your vocation. I love the movie for that reason. And it's also just incredibly well structured. It's like, the craft is tip top. And then we entered this kind of cultural moment. And the thing that encapsulates it is this idea of silence is violence. And of course, that was something that was used to kind of around George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter thing. But it also became just the way it was. It was like, there is no neutral ground. You can't be neutral on this. If you're not with us, you're against us. And so if you're not using your animated films to achieve social justice, then you are, you're aiding and abetting the enemies of social justice. And you saw a lot of, content for families, content. It's like, you would have thought that, maybe you'd expect this in like grown-up movies, right? And indeed, they've always had sort of like political content. Sure, why not? And it's just like, I'll go or I won't go, But when it's like kid stuff, and it's like, this is the movie about, the littlest elf at Santa Claus's workshop, and also it's going to be about like racial injustice and like dispossession of like indigenous people from their land or whatever. It's suddenly like, like, why is this like,
yes,
why is this in here? And it's not, it's not even one, I don't kind of want to have this conversation with my kids, and not even necessarily because I disagree, although maybe I do disagree with it, but also because this is not what my kids are thinking about. Like my kids need to be hearing stories, and my oldest is 7. So I'm talking about little kids, it's like stories about loyalty, stories about, being courageous, facing your
virtue.
Fears, and just really basic virtue stuff, like you say, John. Yeah. And so it was a really bizarre thing. It was bad business. My diagnosis is that I think, look, this was, again, this is kind of for the animation or the entertainment industry nerds. I think this is kind of interesting. What happened at Disney over the course of that 20 years? Disney was at the bottom, like in the year 2000. Like they had Treasure Planet, they had they had Home on the Range. Like they were making garbage movies that no one cared about, and everyone loved the Pixar stuff. And so Disney was like a terrible brand that no one was interested in. So Disney bought Pixar, and Disney put all the Pixar guys in charge of that. And then Disney bought Marvel, and then I feel like I'm missing. And then Disney bought Star Wars, bought Lucasfilm.
That's right.
And then Disney bought Fox, and now they had Avatar. And so like it's like every show in town belongs to Disney. Disney was huge. Disney was the behemoth, to the point that like I think Sony made the Star because they were like, well, in a world where Disney owns everything, is there a niche that Disney doesn't own yet? Oh, faith-based. Let's try that, because maybe that's a place where we can eke out a survival here. But so like 2010 to 2020, Disney was like this unbreakable behemoth that no one could touch. And I think there was one year where they had 1/3 market share in the box office. So, that's a huge company in like a wide open, like competitive field. To have 1/3 market share is unbelievable. So I think what happened at Disney is that they started feeling like, we have more capital than we can spend. Let's start spending it. Let's start spending the capital we've built. Stop trying to like make ourselves richer and bigger, and start using this machine that we've built for some other good that's like, from their perspective, the good of social justice, but basically unrelated to the actual mission of the Walt Disney Company. They got so big that it was like, we have so much money, we need to figure out ways to spend this. So I don't even think that they were unaware that they were going to be alienating big parts of the audience. I think they felt like, well, we can afford to. Why wouldn't we? We're Disney.
Yeah. Excellent. And so,
but and to getting back to the thing of like, right, because this wasn't just a conversation about how Disney went off the rails, but like, where does that leave parents now, right? And I think a lot of parents have found Bluey. I love Bluey. I think it's beautiful. It brings a tear to my eye. I recommend it to everybody, and I think it's a good maybe way into talk about like what I think is happening now, what parents should and shouldn't be doing. Because I think a lot of parents have seen what's been happening and said, great, we're opting out. We're only watching movies made from 1995 or earlier.
That's right. Or they're giving up. They're even getting worse in the sense that they're throwing out all their TVs. I mean, however that makes you feel when I say that makes you feel. But there's this almost this absolutist where it's all or nothing, and right now it's nothing out of fear. And yes, agreed.
Yeah, well, and I will grant to those parents that's easier. That's the easy way to avoid this, is just to say we're not doing any of it. But I think it's really sad, and it's an impoverishment of our children's childhood. And I just think any of us can think about our own childhood and how much we loved thinking about and playing Star Wars or Indiana Jones or whatever it was, Jurassic Park. Like, all those movies were a big part of our national culture, our childhood, what we had in common with other kids. It like animated our imagination about who we wanted to be when we grow up. Like, how many men our age when they were boys wanted to be archaeologists. And it's not because archaeology is fun, but it's because you get to go through like booby traps and stuff, right?
That's right.
So I just, I think it's such a shame to impoverish our children because of our fears about what these movies will do to them. Now, I do think like we have to take that responsibility seriously of like giving our kids, you don't give your kids garbage to eat. You got to make sure you don't give your kids garbage diet when it comes to entertainment as well. But I think that it is one more job we have to do. Unfortunately, you can't automate it. Like, you can't outsource it. You kind of have to like be actively present and maybe take an interest in the movies that your kids are watching. And that being said, I can recommend a lot of recent movies that I would recommend wholeheartedly. Like, I think the Puss in Boots: The Last Wish,
yes,
which my kids have gotten obsessed with. It's an awesome movie. Like, even just like as a guy movie, it is so cool. There's like spaghetti Western references in it. The big bad wolf is in the movie. He's a bounty hunter, and he actually is revealed at the end of the movie. He is death. Like, literally the personification of death in the world of Shrek is the big bad wolf. And that is so freaking cool. Yeah. And it's a kid's movie. And my kids are like, I'm death. And it's, it's like, wow, they're like grappling with real subjects. That movie is about Puss in Boots. He lives 9 lives. He's a cat. And what happens when he dies the 8th time? And the doctor tells him, Puss, like, you only have 1 life left. How are you going to live it? That is a great subject for a movie. Like, Catholic, Christian, whoever you are, like, or no faith at all. Like, and so I think the message here is like, guys, parents, there are a lot of really, really good movies still being made, even from places that you might be surprised. Like, maybe you didn't think DreamWorks had it in them. They totally have it in them. I also personally love The Wild Robot. I have a friend who hates The Wild Robot.
I love it.
He thought it was an AI propaganda thing, but I see the whole thing more allegorically than he does.
I was actually going to ask your opinion on that, so I'm glad that you brought it up, because when I went to it with my kids, like I went to Paw Patrol movie and fell asleep on Paw Patrol and expected the exact same thing sort of happen, and found myself crying in that movie because of the themes of sacrifice and of love and of shouldering the burden of another and of teamwork. And I haven't seen a cartoon movie so filled with positive virtues and messages that I actually, when it came out for rental, rented it thinking to myself, I must have been in a weird, I must have only gotten 4 hours of sleep a night or something like that, and watched it again, started tearing up again the second time. And so we're on the same page as far as that's concerned.
Honestly, DreamWorks has been on a tear, at the same moment that Disney and Pixar have been stumbling, like those 2 movies in a row. And I also personally love The Bad Guys. I don't think it's got quite as much like heft or value in it, but it's a really cool movie. So I think DreamWorks is on a tear, but I also think there is a big gap in the marketplace that parents are feeling, and they are handling it in their own ways. And I think it's sad to like I say, I think it's sad to fully opt out, because I think as Catholics, any truth in the world belongs to us. Like, Catholic, universal church,
amen.
The world belongs to us because it was created by God. And this is our history of enculturation, of like embracing the pagan Yule log and whatever, like the Christmas tree, and making that, baptizing it, making it a symbol of Christ. That is what we do, guys. And so I think, like, go out into the secular world, go find those things that are good, true, and beautiful that you can baptize for your family. That's the approach I recommend in this moment where there's a bit of an entertainment desert. We need to be bringing, like, it's our job to kind of go out and bring home the antelope that we killed. Well, maybe it's the same thing with like the entertainment that we bring home to the hearth. But also, there's a business opportunity there for whomsoever shall, take advantage of it. And that's what I'm doing with my new effort. I have a venture that I co-founded 2.5 years ago called Sycamore Studios. And we kind of looked around and realized this is a moment, not only where there's like a gap in the marketplace, but also there's a lot of values aligned folks in the film industry who are sick to death of the kinds of movies they've been working on and are really ready and so eager and just ready to make films that they actually want their families to watch. And so this is a great moment where, if however you want to define us, the people who kind of are pissed off about like how bad entertainment has gotten, we aren't outsiders anymore. We're insiders, and we have been through the training grounds of the studios, and we're ready to make movies that are at the same quality of all the movies that we've always loved. We just, and the audience is looking for that too. So we started Sycamore Studios. We make not just develop, but also finance and produce the production of financing the production of independent animated feature films. So our first movie that we've announced is a Dr. Dolittle movie coming out probably 2027. Dr. Dolittle is not a faithy property. There's nothing faith-based or inherently values aligned about it, but it's a great wish fulfillment concept. What if I could talk to animals? It's such a wonderful idea, and it's sort of a clothesline on which you can hang a lot of different ideas. And as we've been developing our version of Dr. Dolittle, we're finding like this is a movie about vocation. Like in some ways you can, our take, and we're still kind of under wraps and in the vault, but I'll say like, it's a little bit like Jonah, Jonah running away from his vocation and then getting taken back to where he belongs, funny enough, by a whale. And we didn't even do this on purpose, but we realized that at the end of our movie, Dr. Doolittle's taken home on the back of a whale. So even more resonant there than we anticipated. But like, it's a movie about vocations, a movie about loyalty and friendship. It's also about stewardship of creation, and man's right relationship with creation is not neglect. We should not be absent from creation, and it's also not exploitation. And somewhere in between those two is the virtue of stewardship. And that's that's the value map that Doolittle is navigating in our version of his story. So that's maybe just a good example of the way we're building the films. Is we want these to be big movies. I mean, we make big movies. That's what we've all been doing, everyone on the team. But these movies have a special resonance for people of faith. And we want the faith audience to know, hey, these movies are being made for us.
That's
we
incredible.
Can fully trust these movies.
I'd like to jump in here and ask a little bit more. I would love to talk about what got you into Sycamore Studios and that whole thing, but we don't have time. So I do want to actually talk within Sycamore Studios. I am grateful that you are not on the edutainment pathway of just creating another B-rated Catholic something or other.
Right.
Am I correct in assuming that you want your films to appear on a Netflix, on an Amazon Prime, something along those lines, streamed? Or what's the overarching mission and goal? Because you're creating big films, but at the same time, you're a smart guy. You're not ignorant to the reality that trying to create your own streaming service coming out the gate would be a bit of a nightmare. So I'm very curious what your thoughts are on all that.
Yeah, the streaming business is a really tough business, and like Disney, there's always the first mover advantage, right? So like Netflix was the first one out, and so that was always going to be like they were always going to have a head start. Well, if you're not the one with the head start, if you had to pick someone to be, I would pick to be Disney, because their library of content is so deep and it's so beloved that like if you start a streaming service that's got the entire Disney library, that's a very easy sell to a lot of parents. I think they've tripped up on their own shoelaces for other reasons though, because of what they've done subsequent to that. Okay. But even Disney Plus is not profitable yet. And that should have been the most obvious little bunt.
Wow.
And they're on track to be profitable, but streaming is a very hard business to get into and to succeed at. And a lot of the streamers that have been launched and seemed promising have been rolled up and sold to someone else and merged. And that's what's going to be happening in that world for like the next 5 years until we settle at some equilibrium where there's not so many streaming services, but there's like enough that they can actually make their money. That's not a business we wanted to get into. And it's not what we're passionate about either. What we're passionate about is telling stories. And so we knew we wanted to be on the side that's making movies. And the truth is, with these streamers finding that the business is more uphill than maybe everyone realized at the beginning, they are, a lot of them, backing out of original content creation and getting more into acquisitions, which is one more advantage for us. Like what it means is that the movies that we make are going to be, it's like they they are a pizza house with like the storefront that's selling pizza, but like we're the ones making the pizzas, and we can sell our pizzas to any storefront, any of these storefronts. So yeah, no, we absolutely would be happy to have our films on a Netflix or HBO Max or whatever, like any of those streaming services. We're deliberately not building our business right now as a distribution company.
Yeah.
At some level, we're just copying Walt Disney in his like kind of phase one, which was that the early Disney films are distributed by RKO Distribution. You see the logo right at the beginning of the movie. And then eventually he built out Buena Vista Distribution. And that's where like, okay, this is all becoming kind of integrated, and you're able to capture that much more money when you do distribute yourself. But it's too big a bite to start with. And our goal is just to make movies that people love, that they'll go and see. And then if Sycamore Studios, if like what comes out of this run of films is that people actually know our name and go to seek our films and trust it, the way that people felt about Pixar from 2000 to 2010, that's the win that we're going for.
That's excellent. Well, I do hope you gain that win for all of our sakes, because I think, and I've gone down this road, I've been a marketer both inside and outside of the Catholic faith for the last decade of my life. And I've been involved in all of these social media, oppositions to Facebook or to, Twitter or these sort of things, X. And we find ourselves like those battles have already been fought. And regardless of what we say or what we wish would happen, we need to be there where everybody else is. And we need to be providing content of great value. That's not edutainment. That's, that's entertaining. And it has those themes and it has those virtues and has those methods behind it. So you are in my prayers, and I hope all my listeners here will offer up a prayer for you and your team there at Sycamore Studios. So for my last question, pretend that I'm a 22-year-old guy who's trying to get into the entertainment industry. He is either an actor or, an aspiring director, but realizes that it's all pretty stitched up. He's afraid that he's going to have to remove his or ignore his moral values to be successful. What would you say to me?
Great. And yes, John, let me first thank you for your prayers, and thank any listeners who offer prayer for Sycamore Studios. Thank you. Please do. It's a big part of it. And by the way, if you want to follow us, at some point we'll have a newsletter. We don't have one yet, but there's a sign up thing at sycamorestudios.com. So if you come to sycamorestudios.com, you can come
put that right in the show notes there.
And you'll hear from us. But I want to answer your question with an anecdote that happened to me on Anomalisa, that first gig that I had in LA. So I was on this movie. I was so excited, finally had like paid work in the film industry. And after like a month and a half of doing shots in this bar scene, this movie is an R-rated Charlie Kaufman movie. Like it's kind of like an art house adult film. It's not a family movie. So the scene that I had been animating was grown-ups in a bar, like meeting each other, flirting over drinks, and had a blast doing it. Did a really, great job. Was very happy with my work. And then at the end of that run of shots, the producer came in and said, "Great, Tim, nice work. We're gonna have you move over to stage 8 now." And I said, "Okay, great, stage 8. So what's happening at stage 8?" And she said, "Oh, that's the oral sex scene." And then she left my stage, and I thought, I was kind of flabbergasted and stuck there and kind of thinking like, oh my gosh, like I got into animation so I wouldn't have to have these kinds of moral dilemmas. Like, what the heck? This is my first job. I've only had it for a month and a half. Lord, I kind of thought like I was going to have a career here and not just like a month and a half of paid work. And then, because what do I do? Like, I don't think I can morally do this. It's not only something that I have no experience with, but also like there's, the characters aren't married. Like if I was an actor, I wouldn't do this scene. I don't want to have anything to do with this. But if I tell that to my producer, like, am I going to get fired? And then like, if I get fired, what other job? Like, am I going to be the guy who wouldn't do the sex scene on Anomalisa? Like, what do I do then? And then I kind of just like ultimately faced facts and was like, I think I have to say something. And if I get fired, at least I get fired for the right reason. And if that happens, well, I guess I can always go back to New York Film Academy or something. And so I knocked on her door and I was like, "Rosa, hey, sorry, I should have said something, but I don't really feel comfortable doing those shots. Is there anything else you can put me on? Anything at all?" And she was like, Oh yeah, yeah. You're the third person to ask not to do that. We'll find something else for you, no problem. And that was it. And it was so not a big deal. And I had gotten so in my head and sweating and nervous and anxious and everything. And it was so not a big deal. And, you know, I think the reason I wanted to share that story is that my experience has been the biggest obstacles are usually in our imagination, and that we imagine Catholics are persona non grata. I'm going to be like this outsider, and I'm never going to be able to make friends here, and everyone's going to like know my values, and it's going to be of this liability. I think people know all sorts of different people, and it might be something they consider a little weird about you, maybe, but it's not. As long as you can do your job, it's probably not going to be as big of a deal as you imagine. And so my thought is like, we just have to have a bias for action, for boldness. We have to, and I think trust that 9 times out of 10, the fear that we feel is way out of proportion to the actual obstacle that we face.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. So stay committed to your morals and trust in the Lord. I mean, and it's a great ability to be a witness and to an evangelist, in these situations without directly, carrying a Bible and, thumping some scripture after another. So no, I really appreciate it.
Right. And it's always easy to think, well, I'll do that when I'm more established. But here I am at the beginning of my career. I've got nothing. I've got no capital. I've got no leverage. Yeah, but if you're good at your job and you found yourself in some kind of position of employment, or you're getting a call back to the audition or whatever, like there's something they like about you, and so there is leverage there. And it's like the thing you can control is what you contribute your efforts to. And I think you can't undervalue that because that's something that can move the needle, I think. And the other thing too is that too many people like experience hostile work environment, like political work environment, where they're like, my opinions are not allowed. I can't say anything in this workplace because if I said anything, I would get fired. And I've heard that a lot, especially from like conservatives in the film industry. And I just it's so annoying and depressing to me because I just think like, have you tried? Have you said anything? Did you add a little bit of friction? Like, did you contribute some opinion that let everyone know that there's not a consensus that they can assume on this issue here? Because if you do it in a polite way, you're probably not going to get fired. You're probably just going to make that person realize, that was a little awkward and weird. Maybe I should think twice before I say that again in mixed company. And I guess what I'm getting at is like awkwardness and sort of an icky cringe feeling is one of the weapons that we wield. Like that is like adding friction to a social situation because like something someone said was like not something that we agree with. The weapon you wield is like making it a little awkward for them. And I don't think they'll do it again quite so unthinkingly in the future.
Agreed. Wow. Well, Tim, what a blessing having you on the show. So let our listeners know where else other than sycamorestudios.com, which will be in the show notes, where else can they follow all the work that you're doing?
We have social media things. We're not doing anything with them yet. We'll figure that out at some point. We're too busy making movies. That might be about it. I guess the other thing that's coming down the pike to keep an eye out for is I'm working on the project with David and Lorenzo Henry. Very high quality, really funny show about the saints, an animated show about the saints. Catholic families are going to really love this show. So keep an eye out for that. It's called Hallow Heroes. And I don't know when to expect that, but it's an exciting project.
Awesome. Okay. What about your YouTube channel, Tim? Would you like people to follow you over there?
Yeah, I do. I have a YouTube channel and I'm not super active on it, but you can find Head Over Heels there. And another thing that I did that I think might be interesting, anyone who's interested in the film industry, especially animation, I uploaded a 3-video series getting into things that I learned as an animator and kind of the art and craft of animation, as well as kind of my career and sort of my experiences. It's just kind of a fun little video essay about my 2 years as an animator. So that's also on my YouTube channel. And I think that's at Timothy Reckart on YouTube.
Great. I'll be sure to put that in.
If it's wrong, just change it in the show notes.
Yeah, totally fine. Well, God bless you, Tim. I'm grateful for you joining me today.
Thanks, John.
Yeah. And as I end each of our episodes, be a man, be a saint.